I think that's a good place to start, actually. We have a number of the themes that have just been brought up there are reflected in our program. So Adopt a Monument, for those who don't know, is 32 years old now, started in the early 90s. Started in response to it's also heritage risk in view, outside of planning. So there were a couple of projects across Scotland in the early 90s, Carden Tower in Fife, Ardnadam in Cowell and Argyll, and most of those sites, Brainport Bay and also in Argyll, and most of those sites are kind of still there, managed by the local authority and or being refreshed, should I say. So, but there was only a small number of sites. And then without any staffing, the organisation developed a programme of volunteer-led, community-led heritage management and conservation. And that ran all the way up until about 2009, with another kind of half dozen sites taking place in that time. And we managed to raise funding in 2009 to develop the programme much more. So basically, at its heart, it's a conservation project led by and for people. Just a very, 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 very quick note about AS. So we're a national charity in Scotland. Obviously, we were formed 80 years ago. We have a number of programs, and it's usually about engaging with people through our skills program, Scottish Archaeology Month, our new audiences program, all those sorts of things. So, as I say, Adopt a Monument started in 1991. There were a number of projects that appear to be around the same time. I was talking to some Italian colleagues in Naples a few months ago, and we were kind of trying to compete about who may have been the first Adopt a Monument. Adopt a Schools in Naples started in 1991 too. And then from our program, there have been another few initiatives, one in Finland, well, 3 in Finland now, and 1 in the Republic of Ireland. As I say, there are about 115 finished projects, so 138 projects in total, and we're still working on some. What I'm going to do today is just kind of give you a very brief overview of what we're trying to achieve by using one example, and that example is our Real Wild West project over on the west coast of Scotland in Arden Merkin. But just to give you a very, very brief intro, so it's about skills, it's about training support, it's about working with communities to develop a project that they want to take forward. As we've just noted, most of the principles behind Adopt is conservation, so excavation is very rare, but I am going to show you an example of where that is happening. So, Adopt a Monument on Arden Merkin. For those who don't know, Arden Merkin is another candidate, one of the candidates for the most westerly point on the British mainland. They're very keen on that. There's only 300 people who live in West Arden Merkin in total, and about 150 people who live on the west end of the peninsula. The group there, the Arden Merkin History and Heritage Association, adopted 10 different sites. They produced a tourism trail. There's a map. There's a website. They did some conservation repairs. They've done a training program to go into later. Some excavations, as I said. And they have been doing some monitoring work on the 23 designated sites in the region. And I think the key thing here is, when I say community-led, internally there's a lot of debate about what a volunteer is, volunteer, participant, etc., etc. And for a lot of us, Adopt a Monument is about working with and for communities. And I guess the word co-production would work, or community-led, but we're not really, we get kind of tangled up in the words, but effectively, this program was designed to address the needs identified in the West Arden Merkin Community Development Plan, and those were a lack of options for tourists, for things to do and see. There was a lack of opportunities for people to come together in the local area to do things together. There was a need for parking, which we've only very, very partly solved, obviously, through Adopt a Monument, and an overnight stays. And then the other thing was about isolation. It's a very rural community. And again, going back to the second point there, it's about bringing people together. So these are the 10 sites. They ranged in a very wide ranging. So there's an ice house for salmon fisheries, a lighthouse, a township, well, 2 townships, Acknahar and Glendryan, 3 chambered cairns, all 3 of them, in fact, on the peninsula, Camsnagal, Gretcheween, and Stordal, Clyde Dangerous. They're one of the major tourism spots at Sana Bay. It's a lovely, beautiful bay. The old church in the village, and then the Kilhone jetty. So, just run you through very quickly some of the points. So this is Fascadale Ice House, very, very remote on the north coast. An amazing bay with a hugely impressive soundtrack of the waves beating against the cliffs there. This has been in use since the 1700s. By the 1970s, they were recognizing themselves that they may be overfished. When we did some of the oral history work around the site, there was quite a feeling that there maybe it could have been sustained a bit longer, but actually by that point it'd gone out of use mostly. But they could, all the way from the 1890s, they could get salmon from Fascadale and Ardmurchan to London overnight by using the trains on the Mallaig line. What the volunteers did here is they did a building assessment. It's got an amazing barreled ceiling for where the ice was kept. They did some survey work to obviously work out where all the different features were, the sheds, the stores, the ice ponds, all that sort of stuff. But they also took it upon themselves to paint the inside of the interior. They put some interpretation up since this picture. The boat you can see was in Harrogate. It's one of the original cobbles used in the 1960s. They found it, they bought it for £1 and drove it up. It was called Pedro, bizarrely, but there you go. And at the moment these beams you can see need replacing, and we've got planning to do that, and it would turn into a bit more of a capital project as they go forward. But at the moment, it's about making it accessible. When they first started work on this, it must have had at least 2 feet of sheep manure inside, which actually is now spread across the peninsula. I did wish we'd mapped where that had gone, but there you go. The lighthouse. This is arguably the most westerly point of the British mainland, and they've done a huge amount of work in making this a great place for tourists to go. It's obviously stunning in the summer. They have a new cafe and all those sorts of things, and we were able to support some of the infrastructure works that you can see in front of the fencing and things, and then some of the interpretation. This is ice cream architecture talking to the locals. I'm going to come back to this picture in a second. This is Aknahar. It's one of the townships it's a very, very, it's inside the caldera to the extinct volcano on the peninsula. It's an amazing settlement, but the crofting relationship, the history of the crofting there is very fractured, so that everyone gets along. But this one you can see is owned by one person, the one you can kind of just see in the edge of the photo is owned by another person, and just the access and the amazing kind of culture and history of the place had not been told. People just kind of drive past on the road to Sana Bay. This is Glendryan. This is an amazing township of about 40 buildings. Set right up against the cliff there, and it was basically died overnight when the road came in. So the same road I just talked about came in, and this Glendryan was about 2 miles off the road, and people just moved. But the architecture and the remains there are amazing, and it's one of those places where people can park and go and can walk. So it's a key site for the group. Camsnagal, this is an amazing bay with a cemetery and a chambered cairn and 2 townships, and we can see up the hill there, on the top of the hill is 2 other scheduled townships. And this was again, it's another point where tourists stopped, but there's no information, there's nothing to see. So it's mostly about vegetation management and recording. But they did look at some excavations there. Is this the right one? Oh, yeah. Sorry, yes. So got myself confused there. So one of the things that we came to the point of during this program. So when it was set up, as I said, it was set up in response to the community development plan, and everyone was looking at the kind of major headline sites. So the designated sites, the sites that were already kind of relatively well known on the mapping, or local historian had written some tour books, guidebooks. And so those were the ones they picked out. But during the course of the project, 2 things kind of happened. One was actually local people were interested in their own history. So crofting became a very big part of our project as opposed to the prehistory. But also, the group themselves wanted to grow and to become more sustainable on their own level. So one of the things we did was a number of interventions at Camas during at the township there, just looking at the archaeology of the place, just to show the group what was involved, what they may be able to do themselves, what they might need help with, and to the point that I raised earlier, actually, do we need to do this? What information can we actually get without doing the intervention? And I think in a number of ways that worked quite well, particularly when the geophysics were completely wrong. But they were very well done, I should say, but they were by Rose. But they were, yeah, it just shows the scale and the yeah. Gretcheween Chambered Cairn, an amazing site. It's probably the most southerly Hebridean chambered cairn. It has a huge history of access issues. So cattle and other livestock management issues, access through three different crofts in Aknahar, but and tourists, particularly during lockdown, it's marked on the OS map as stones, or one of the OS maps it says Stone Circle. So people have been parking in the Crofter's Drive outside the house, knocking on her window, asking where the stones are, and they get to the site and they see it's an amazing site if you know what you're looking at, but it is an interesting one to find. I mean, in a field full of stones. But what we did there, so we basically rerouted the access. We created the trail and things, and we have done some vegetation management and recording. And I think it's in a much better state for everyone, particularly the well-being of the crofter. And one of the things this project did. So it basically, we've been calling this an Adopt Plus because we didn't really know what to call it. 10 projects in one, a full training program that included all sorts of things from heritage and archaeological skills, as you might imagine, but all the way through to first aid and health and safety, all the things they might need to be able to run the tourism operation. So there was tourism training, traditional skills, as I say, archaeological skills, but there are also things like licensing, stuff around the use of the cafe, access plans. So it was really about, in a remote location, how can we support a project to its fullest? And then when you get to the end of these projects, obviously you realise you're actually just at the start of them, aren't you? Because there's now an infrastructure there, and you've got to maintain it, and you've got to keep it going, and that's what they're doing. The Wander West website has the map and all the sites that you can see with the little stories and little vignettes of what the different people might be. But they also recreated 10 interpretation panels and 3 for each of the sites, but then also 3 hub sites which contain all the information and all the things that you might want to join up with. I think it was really, in that spirit, in the spirit of the project, I think it's really helped guide people about where to go. There's lots of single track roads, lots of difficult access, no parking, all those things. So small steps, etc. This picture, this is the old church. Cara, this is not your photo, Cara. This is one someone else took. Everyone takes the same photo. You can just looking over on Mull there in the background. In fairness to Cara, the lintel here was repaired. That's one of Cara's projects when she worked with AS. But the rest of the church needed much more vegetation management issues that had grown up in the meantime. All that's been taken care of. And again, this was a really access one. People parking on the road, people parking in passing places. So we rerouted the access, put some signs and interpretation up. And again, that seems to be working well. Santa Bay, an amazing place, beautiful location, huge crofting and prehistoric presence. There's a hill fort, etc., but absolutely no way of telling what you're looking at. So this was mostly just interpretation. Back to Camas, vegetation management, again, trying to make the site more visible. And then the Aknahar. So the picture I showed you before of the kind of the rough grazing and the collapsed buildings. This is what happened to it after the initial round of vegetation management and works. So we employed Pete, he's the man in all black. in the top photo there, rural skills, and he ran a program of dry stone diking, vegetation management, lime mortaring, path building, fence building. And whilst we had a great team of volunteers who came every day and did all the work with Pete, it was actually able to use this to train the estate staff on fencing, to work with the different crofters about how we might look at some of these buildings in the future, design and improve the access. And he's put some benches in, he's created a lovely space to just kind of sit and just reflect on the place, the beauty of the place. And one of the things we've done, we didn't repair the buildings fully. We just consolidated the buildings so that they were safe and accessible. One of the group does want to put a roof on it, but that's a different story. We might get there, we might not. But the point is, I think just improving the landscape, improving the space in a relatively cheap and light touch way has had a huge impact. And Ardmurchan is one of those places, it's just beautiful and amazing, but the actual local people, the people born there, had very little interest in the archaeology until we started doing things like this. So, for us, that was a win. I hope they think that too. So Sordal, this is quite dangerous, one of the third chamber cairn. As you can see the stone, this is the chamber. The cairn is 80 meters long. It's completely been robbed out completely, and it had cattle on it. Back in 2006, we'd had a fence put up, but that had collapsed. So that was repaired to keep the cattle off it. But it looked like this stone here had been collapsing in on itself. So we did a conservation assessment, and we did some very minor excavation to make sure the stone was set and safe. Yeah, I've just covered this, sorry. So that's the picture of the Achnahar before. And we had some lovely quotes from the people about how they enjoyed it. And as I say, the Achnahar project, in fact, whilst it did include actual intervention, was a great just for actually then people going out and finding new sites, surveying sites, monitoring sites. One of the things that I think has been touched on already, and will be touched on again later, was all 23 sites here were designated sites in the area are now being monitored regularly. And this, just an example of bringing people together. This is the Kilhoan jetty. The jetty, the main way for fishermen in particular, and the canoe club and others to access the bay in the village of Kilhoan. This was in complete state of disrepair. The group came together during lockdown, and they couldn't find a contractor to do the work. They repaired it all. You can see what you can see in the bottom right-hand photo is now the Tuesday Night Men's Club. There was a story which Nature Scott repeated, as Nature Scott were one of the funders. Nature Scott had been told was that the project saved a marriage because they were out doing different things. So I've not included that in any of our evaluation, but I think. And the launch. So the launch of the regatta, the annual regatta, was amazing, and basically there were three different. In the lifetime of the person speaking, there have been three different groups of what they call jetty boys. The latest one being 2 years ago. So yeah, it's a great project, and now the space, you see people swimming off it, fishing off it. There's 2 fishermen now use it. They had a 400% increase in moorings the week it was reopened. So, and a lot of this, the tourism figures I think are difficult to track because of what happened during the kind of staycations and things. But we'll keep monitoring the impact there. And as I say, so these are just some of the sites. This is Camas Nagal again, but these are some of the sites the group have been out recording and monitoring on their own. This is the excavation team, and that's me. Oh no, yeah, that's me.